Dynamite Soccer 2002 is the third entry in the series that was originally released on the PlayStation in Japan back in 2002 and follows the same aesthetic of the previous two games in the series, with the use of very quirky style graphical elements, with having 3D visuals for the likes of the environments and the arenas that you're playing in, but the characters and players would all be utilised with 2D sprites, which definitely became a staple in the series history, and it really made it stand out compared to other types of soccer games, because even though this game had been released in 2002, like the PlayStation had already been out around 7 years at this point, and you had more mainstream games with the likes of FIFA and ISS Pro, or would eventually become Pro Evo. Games like this, you'd be wondering to yourself, why were they developing games like this when you had games that looked better in terms of the visual quality? But I suppose that was kind of the trend that these type of games were going for, because they wanted to be different. Now, had these games been released earlier in the PlayStation's lifespan, say around 95 and even in 96, these games would have probably done quite well and would have been very popular. But obviously they were popular in Japan for a reason, because with the games having 4 entries in the series, it states that it was popular. But again, with the dominance of the ISS series and FIFA, it's very, very hard for a lot of other types of soccer games to really make any sort of a mark on the console and even in the games industry in general. But what it does do quite well. If you have played the previous 2 entries in the series, they play almost identical. There's very little difference in terms of what is on offer, apart from updated player stats and teams and a few additional modes and features, but graphically they're essentially the same. The dynamics of the sprites are somewhat improved with each version of the game, but technically in all respects they're visually the same game in all regards. But how does it play and feel compared to the originals? It does play quite well, but even with that, I played the 98 edition and I found that actually quite good, and I found it to be simple enough to pick up and play, although the gameplay speed doesn't be as fast compared to other titles. Now, the speed has been somewhat improved in this version of the game from what I could tell from having spent time playing it, but in all honesty, compared to other soccer games that I've played on the PlayStation, while it may not look as much, say, in the visual department, the graphics are nice and it does suit what the game's going for. And if I'll be brutally honest, like compared to soccer games I have played, this here game series would be the closest that I've found to the likes of FIFA and ISS and even This Is Soccer in terms of its playability and its control systems, as you can dribble the ball, you can string passes together, and you feel like you genuinely have more control over the game overall. Mind you, it is difficult, it is tough to score goals, the computer AI can be somewhat difficult to overcome for the most part, but it generally is a good fun game to play overall. And considering, even though it has simulation elements, but it feels more like an arcade game in all respects to it, but it just has a fun type of quirky nature to it that you don't often see in soccer games, and that's what makes it really stand out. And I just like the visual style of it. I just think it's fun and it's quirky and very different. But it's interesting because even spending time looking for information on the games online, there's very little information that you can find regarding any of the games in this series that you can find on the internet, or maybe if you can, it's probably locked behind the language barrier, because with the games being only solely seen in Japan, there probably is very little information that you can find in other regions about the game. But having spent time playing it, it is actually a decent title, or a decent array of titles, although I'd imagine when you compare them to the likes of the more mainstream games, they probably wouldn't have been as well received. But for what they do offer, they definitely play a lot better than some of the soccer games I've played on the PlayStation. But it will be quite difficult for many to understand what to do, or even just to pick up and play in general. But once you spend a bit of time with it, they are a fun selection of games to really get into. And if you're looking for something a little bit different, you can't go wrong with these type of games. They are definitely quirky in their nature. If you want something that genuinely is visually different and it's more simplistic in terms of how it looks and it feels, but it will present a challenge all the same, then you can check these games out and see what you think for yourself. And I would love to know your thoughts on Dynamite Soccer 2002 for the PlayStation if you have played it yourself, and do you know anything about these series of games, and if so, what do you think of them? Be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated of future videos. And if you would like to see more content around other types of soccer games also released on the PlayStation, you can check out the playlist here on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.